Wallach On Law examines criminal cases and criminal justice and asks the question, we are tough on crime, but is that helping? Can we be smarter and make us safer?
You want answers! I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Ian Wallach is a criminal defense attorney and civil rights lawyer in Los Angeles and New York. His cases have ranged from defense of the accused to the prosecution of governments in their treatment of convicts. He's a former Los Angeles deputy public defender and a frequent contributor on legal issues to radio and television shows nationwide.
You're out of order! You're out of order! The whole trial is out of order!
You're gonna need a bigger boat. This country, our courts are the great levelers. In our courts, all men are created equal.
This is Wallach On Law. Here's your host, Ian Wallach.
Hey everybody, thank you. Welcome to this week's edition of Wallach On Law. I'm your host, Ian Wallach, and today we're going to be continuing our discussion about exonerations and how they help us see how fundamentally flawed so much of our prison system and our criminal justice system actually is. To have this discussion, we're going to have on the show Nick Yarris. Now, Nick Yarris was the first man to seek post-conviction DNA testing. But he wasn't the first person to get that testing, and he wasn't the first person to be exonerated on the basis of that testing. A lot of things happened in between. He was about the 160th person to be released with the help of the Innocence Project. And his work and his way out is a pretty fascinating story. It was also coupled with his accidental escape from jail, and you're going to hear him talk about it, how that happened, and also what his life has been like as he tries to come back and re-enter society without some of the tools that I believe should be inherent in any penal institution, tools of rehabilitation, tools that help someone re-enter society. Now, Nick is not the first exoneree that's been on our show. We've had Christopher Ochoa on the show. He came on and talked about how he was just so beaten down and that he ended up and scared and threatened that just started a ball rolling. And eventually he ended up even testifying to acts that he didn't commit and against people that he knew. And the real question was not why would anybody do that, why would anybody testify and say they did a crime they didn't commit, but what could happen to someone to make them do that, and he helped us understand that. And Harold Hall was on the show, and he helped us, and his story is fantastic because he got out without DNA, just plain good-fashioned lawyering. Someone looked at this conviction and said, hey, this is fundamentally wrong. This signed confession has nothing to do whatsoever with the facts that came out in the case, so something must have happened to this boy to make him sign this confession, and ultimately a judge did agree, and he walked out the door. But listen, we can all agree that there's so many things wrong with our justice system when it comes to individuals who are convicted who should not have been. Juries are scared of big crimes, and they are more likely to convict someone, to be more open to convicting someone the more heinous the crime is. It's abhorrent that we might be locking up somebody for a crime that they didn't commit in conditions that are so subhuman. It's probably abhorrent that we put anybody in conditions that are so subhuman. It's really scary that we put people in these conditions for such a long period of time, cut off their support networks, make them ineligible for certain types of public benefits when they get out, because really what we're doing is just making a sort of an army of future criminals. These people will have nothing else to do that will allow them to lawfully enter. There's no means of lawfully entering society when they are ultimately released or when their sentence time rolls out. And it's also really expensive. I mean, think about Mr. Yarris, 20 years of incarceration. According to certain studies, and this is probably a low estimate, $47,000 a year to incarcerate an inmate. Put him in there for 20 years. That's you're looking at close to $1 million. Let's stack on the amount of money for trials. Let's stack on the amount of money if they're wrongfully incarcerated for that civil judgment that's probably going to come down the line, or for the cost of exoneration fee if you're in one of those states where wrongfully incarcerated individuals are actually entitled to receive some money at the end of the day. We might be talking about $1.5 million, $2 million to do what? To incarcerate somebody who didn't do something and provide them no useful tools for reentering into society. It doesn't make any sense. All in all, prolonged sentences make no sense. Be the person innocent. Be the person guilty. To take somebody, to lock them up for 10 years. In California, we got to use the gun, get 20 years, automatically rule out here. It sounds really tough when someone's on a podium asking for your vote. It feels really good when you're walking into that ballot booth and you take that little stick and you stick it through the ballot and you say, "Hey, I don't like that bad guy. I'm going to put him away for 20 years." But it's actually really not in your interest. I mean, if you want to spend all this money and not provide any tools to remove people from your society who you're going to have to take care of later, that just does not seem like a really, really smart endeavor on pretty much anybody's part. But anyway, rather than a heavy rant, let's talk about somebody who's been through the system. He's gone into the system for things that he did do. He got caught up long-term in the system for something that he didn't, and he ultimately found his way out. So today on Wallach On Law, we are welcoming Nick Yarris. Now, Nick Yarris is the author of a book that's coming out, 7 Days to Love. But the reason he's on our show is incredibly compelling. He was framed for murder. He lost 21 years of his life that he spent in prison, incredibly garish prison. He spent 8,057 days on death row. He was exonerated in 2004, but we're going to talk to him a little bit about what happened to him, why it happened, what the problems were that led to his conviction, what can change, and what we can learn, what he can teach us about how to come back from an experience that's probably more horrific than anyone can imagine, and certainly clearly unjust. Nick, welcome to my show. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Ian, and I'm so glad to be part of the positive effort you're making to make people aware of the law.
Oh, thank you very much.
It's one of the things that rules our lives. Yeah, we don't really understand it until it falls on us, does it? And that's the thing. Ignorance is not a defense. What you do for so many people in making them enlightened is really helpful. And I just have one correction. It's 7 Days to Live, the first book, and it's about my incarceration of 23 years on death row. And it's a great honor to come back to the United States after being away for 9 years in the United Kingdom to now promote my book and a new film that's coming out in January. And it's so great that I get this opportunity to tell listeners what it's truly like to feel the force of the law, to understand the ignorance of the law and of yourself while understanding it all. It's a very complex thing.
Yeah, well, let's break it down. Why don't you take me back to what happened in December of 1981?
Well, in December of 1981, I was arrested in the city of Chester, Pennsylvania, by a police officer who stopped me for going through a stop sign. I was high on drugs, and I suffer from a brain disorder that was given to me in my childhood after I was assaulted by a man in my neighborhood. And he beat my head in with a rock and left me with an affliction called aphasia. So my ability to process language in times of stress breaks down. And I couldn't deal with the fact that I was being pulled over, afraid. And then the officer was yelling at me, and I couldn't hear him. And he pulled me from the car, and he put his forearm against my throat and started to push backwards, and I fought against him, and we started to struggle. He pulled his gun out, and the gun went off into the ground, and I stopped resisting, and he put me in the backseat of his car. Then he changed on me, and he changed on me, and he gave me a sinister smile. Then he got on the phone and started yelling that he was under attack, and shots were fired, and help, help, he's after me. And he made up this scenario that I attacked him and all this stuff. They put me in prison for a $100,000 bail. I was charged with attempted murder and kidnapping of a police officer. I was 20 years old, and it was 4 days before Christmas, and I collapsed. I went through drug withdrawal with no treatment, and it was the worst of my life.
And may I ask what the drug of affliction was?
Methamphetamine, which is the worst thing to do with somebody with a brain disorder.
Yeah, sure.
And it made my affliction even worse.
And so this was just sort of hitting the scene in the 80s. I mean, it's become infinite.
Yeah, Philadelphia especially. Because I hated myself so much. I was very nasty. I wasn't a nice person. I know that. In fact, I hold myself responsible for everything that happened to me because of the following events. I made up a story.
Wait, let's stop for 1 second. I mean, that is very, very admirable. I also think that anyone who's undergone what you have, and this is one of the classic signs of PTSD, of post-traumatic stress disorder, is self-blame. Of course, it's your ownership to say, I'm responsible for this. But
I was responsible, Ian, because I made up a story about a newspaper article about a woman's murder I had nothing to do with and knew nothing about. I put myself in the eye of the storm with that stupid story that the police soon found out was a lie.
Okay, let's back it up. Let's back it up. You've been brought in
this is
for
why I can
assault to an officer, okay?
Right. And while I'm sitting there facing life imprisonment, I read a newspaper that's my only source of information to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And it was of the Delaware County newspaper of December 16th, 1981.
Okay.
The preceding day, there was a murder. Linda Mae Craig was murdered December 15th, 1981, and it was a mystery killing. I sat there in my mind and I went through this mantra. If I knew something about something this horrific, I bet you I could barter my way out of here. And in that desperate, stupid mantra became this idea that I went forward with. And it only took them a minute to realize that I was just a drug-addled fool making up a story. But what happened after that is on them to own.
Let's talk about the three elements that led to your conviction. You had a detective statement that was unrecorded.
Actually, it was secretly recorded and then redacted
and then edited.
He violated Pennsylvania law and created.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, because this is a felony punishable life.
I agree, Nick. Slow down, Nick. I know that what happened to you is beyond horrific, but I got to channel it into a way that the listener can understand, because it's so much. So there was three elements to your conviction. There was a detective statement that we've subsequently learned to have been an edited and adulterated statement.
False confession.
Hold on. And we know that this issue right now, this issue of videotaping statements has just been addressed by Eric Holder and has just been changed as far as Department of Justice's policy. And even certain states like Texas are enacting laws right now to throw out any conviction, based on a confession, or to exclude any confession that's not recorded. In your case, that was one of the three things that led to your conviction. And just so the listener knows, when you got convicted for killing somebody you didn't kill, somebody else who killed that person got to go free. Punk science played into your conviction as well.
Well, what killed me, back in 1982, all we had was serology. The killer was B-positive blood. He left his semen there on the scene. The thing is, there was the junk science only because of its technological advancements at that time were so poor.
When you were sitting in the courtroom and they were delivering this science, and there was an expert talking to a jury about how sound it was, how real it was,
right.
How convincing was that expert, and what did you feel?
So it's too overwhelming to be answerable. At the time, I just didn't understand why they couldn't identify more. And it's strange. I was the first death row prisoner in America to seek DNA testing when I first learned about it in 1988.
I know.
The first guy.
You were the first guy. And it's 317. I think you were in the mid 100s, but you were
160.
You were the first person, among the first people to seek post conviction DNA testing. Listen, let me bring it back to something a little more. How did you escape from prison, and what happened?
In 1985, I was being transported to court. The Pennsylvania State Supreme Court remanded my case back for the failure of the prosecutor to hand over 33 of the initial homicide pages, and another 15 were redacted. There was an inordinate amount of information. Brady violation sent my case.
And just so our jurors are listening, let me just clarify really quick. A Brady violation, prosecutors have a duty to disclose all evidence, be it favorable or unfavorable to the defense, and frequently they don't. And if they don't, that's called a Brady violation. And there's two things that can happen in this kind of prosecutorial misconduct. First, what should happen, but hardly ever does, is that the case is dismissed. Usually there's a retrial or there's some type of public censure. But basically there was evidence in your case that was not given to your defense counsel that could have helped you out. So
true.
Okay.
All of the statements to witnesses prior to my becoming involved in the case, those statements were erased. They then gave statements later that seemed to coincide with my description. Even though I was first described as being a 5'7" male, I was then described as a 6'2" blonde-haired male. So you can make all the assumptions you want. We know what happened. The thing that really went to the core of the hearing as well was how I only had a 3-day trial. And the judge's opening remarks to the jury was his great assurance to them that the trial would be over by that Friday so that they could all go home and celebrate the 4th of July holiday.
Unbelievable.
And it was Tuesday when he told them that.
So how did you escape? How did you escape from prison? How did you escape?
Yes, sir. I was being transported, and it was the coldest day of the year that year. I had nothing but a prison shirt. We stopped at a restroom. I went into cubicle at a petrol station and used the urinal. The officer standing with me held the door. He went in in the room immediately after me. I, thinking, hey, he was still with me, started to trot back to the officer standing at his car with the cigarette in his hand, smoking with his back turned. When he turned, I was only 10 feet from him, and he pulled his gun out and fired 2 blank shots at me, thinking that I was rushing him. And his testimony was at trial for the escape. He thought I overpowered his partner and that I was coming after him because all he saw was me running at him. I turned and fled, and they chased me with a helicopter and over 200 police officers for the next 5 hours. And I managed to walk to Fraser, Pennsylvania, at 5 miles from the incident. And I stole a car, went to New York City. I went to Florida, and then I turned myself in after 25 days.
You turned yourself in?
Yeah, I couldn't do this. This wasn't an escape. You don't run away from something this big. I was a death row prisoner. I'm not that smart. So I knew that much.
Let me just walk our listeners through what's happened. You've been convicted for a murder that you didn't commit. You blame yourself for putting yourself in the position that allowed this to happen. You escaped from jail. You turn yourself in, and just so they know, you're given a 30-year sentence. Is that correct?
That's on top of, and then they put me on death row in Florida next to Ted Bundy for 8 months before they sent me home.
And then what happened once you were in for now what is both the murder that you didn't commit but the escape that you did? Yeah. They discovered that you didn't commit the murder.
Man, it didn't matter because well before that they gave me a 4-minute beating for escaping. And then I went through all kinds. Wait a minute.
4-minute beating. Describe to me what a 4-minute beating is.
Oh my God, you never want to know this, sir, but I was lured into thinking I was going into a property room to exchange some of my legal work. And I was led by 2 officers I didn't recognize up a flight of stairs across from the death row building in Huntington. And the building across from us had big open windows you could look into from your cells. And this was a public demonstration to everyone on death row not to escape. And as I got around the corner on the top floor, 4 officers in black uniforms with face masks down attacked me with 3-foot truncheons and beat me on my legs, butt, stomach. Oh, man. I lost a piece of my eye. I have a detached retina. They shattered my face. They beat me for 4 minutes. The inmate said that they could see it. And my friend Craig Murphy said that he just threw up because of what they did to me.
And this was called a 4-minute beating, and it was some form of incentive?
No, that's how long it went on for, but that's what they did to me for escaping from death row because 2 of their officers lost a week's pay for what happened. The press made folly of the Huntington guards and said the rednecks must not have searched me. How could I get out of handcuffs? They didn't know that I could take apart my eyeglasses and take off handcuffs. If you put someone in handcuffs for years, they're going to figure them out, and I can take handcuffs off with a hair comb, a bobby pin, a nail, any kind. I have the skill, but they didn't know that. They said that. So they tortured me, and it was, see, that's what really goes to the heart of this. When they found out I was actually someone who could be innocent, they threw away all the autopsy material. They destroyed evidence after I discovered it from reading the transcripts. And I went through a vicious battle between the state and federal court because habeas corpus is not allowed to you as long as they keep your case alive in the state court, so they kept it alive. They're very clever. Lawyers who use their professionalism in the wrong manner are the most devastating in our system overall.
No, I agree. I do want to clarify that right now you're talking about prosecutors and judges. You're not talking about defense counsel. Were you assisted?
Ian, look at my situation. I was dealing with my DNA efforts being handled in the William R. Toll Courthouse Annex of the Media Courthouse in Pennsylvania, and the hearing was being conducted by William R. Toll Jr., former prosecutor, and William R. Toll III was part of the prosecuting team that was defending my efforts to get the DNA, and they were arguing about $1,500 being too much money of the county to spend for DNA testing on a death row prisoner.
You've been out now since 2004, so you've been out 10 years. You're married. You're an educator. What can people do to make wrongs that happen to you not happen or happen less frequently? What can we do?
We need an accountability system that has to have community involvement. We have to change this. It can't be handled by lawyers only. There are good and wonderful lawyers. Peter Goldberger stayed on my case for 11 years without any real pay. I went through the experiences of both good counsel and bad counsel, and the answer is we need people from the outside to help monitor. If you had a airline system that had 140 airline crashes, just like we had 140 exonerations from death row,
317 now. 317 now.
We have all these mistakes, but we don't have an outside source to monitor it. Why is that? There's a Federal Aviation Commission. There's a Trucking Commission. There's whatever federal government operative there is, there's not one that oversees the Justice Department, and that's the problem. We don't have community involvement.
When you walked out the door, were you given any resources to get a job? To help
$5.07 of my own money.
$5.07.
Pennsylvania has no compensation. And I was left sick. I was diagnosed with hepatitis C. I was given that illness in prison, and it almost killed me. That's why I asked to be executed. And it was only because of that the federal court was allowed to step in, and I got the money finally to pay for Dr. Blake in California to do the DNA testing. Our problem with our system is
I take it, as you mentioned earlier, individuals who don't have your ingenuity are not going to be as
How many of my brothers don't have the cleverness to will themselves on? I've watched 11 men kill themselves. How many of them were innocent?
Nick, what do you wish had been given to you when you walked out that door? What would have made it easier? Look, you've done tremendously well for yourself, but let's say somebody else is walking out the door. What should we make available to that person who spent time inside for something they didn't do?
The only thing I would have wished is for a better moment when I first walked out and addressed the press, had I more passionately made them understand. See, I walked up to the media and only said, look, 2 friends of mine are in the prison behind me and they're innocent. But I should have expounded, but I didn't. Only
every time you talk, Nick, I hear from you. Let me ask you, I mean, you have a sense of personal responsibility for being convicted for something you didn't do. That's shocking for me to listen to, but I hear it. You have a sense of personal responsibility for failing to step up for your brethren who are less fortunate when you have.
Because I don't have the luxury of you, Ian. You've done all this without somebody squashing your life.
That's my question. Is this period of self-doubt, is this a result of your incarceration?
Where do you get the motivation from? I don't understand. I don't understand someone like you dedicating your life so much to society when I was a derelict from that society and I had to push myself to feel this way.
Look what you're doing now. Look what you are doing right now. Right now you're helping people stand up for themselves. You're helping people wake up to a problem. You're protecting children, and you're educating the general public that frequently when they fail to apply jury instructions, when they fail to look at the evidence, terrible things can happen in their name. Right now, what you are doing is fantastic. It is a tremendous societal service. No, please own it. Look, at least do me a favor. We got to wrap this up, Nick. But this, Nick, you are making this world. Nick, you are making this world better.
I want to say this one last thing, and I do apologize for interrupting you, sir. You've been so gracious to me and let me speak. But I want you to know this. This is serious. I prayed for someone like you. I waited for someone like you, someone who cared. I had been saddled with attorneys who told Innocence Projects, don't bother, our client's crazy. This DNA thing's a lark. So you have to understand my perspective. The reason that I hold you in esteem is you used your education, you honored your parents, you did the right things that I didn't get a chance to do, and I'm in a foot race with you to make up for it. So you have
Nick,
to. Nick,
first of all, I am thankful and I'm touched, but our stories are miles apart. What you were doing, what happened to you is beyond wrong. What you are doing is the manifestation of right. We got to wrap this up. Nick, can you tell people again the name of the book, the name of the movie, when it comes out?
Yeah, my name is Nick Yarris, Yarris. You can find me at nickjyarris.net.
The book is 7 Days to Love. A storage of.
My book is 7 Days. I'm sorry.
Oh no, please.
And my book is 7 Days to Live, which is being re-released. And the actor Mike Farrell has graciously left a blurb for me on the back cover. I have a very good opportunity to have my book turned into a major motion picture, and I have a film coming out in January that's a documentary as well. So I have very good opportunities, and I'm very happy I got a chance to speak to you today. And Ian, keep doing what you're doing because it makes me so happy that I'm not alone.
Hey Nick, it's an absolute honor to speak with you, and thank you so much for sharing your story and your optimism and helping us wake up. Everyone, this is Nick Yarris, You can Google him. You can read about him. And Nick, it's an honor to have you on my show. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. Same here, brother. Have a good day.
All right, people. Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. And I hope you found that insightful, intriguing, and if anything, perhaps even a little bit motivating. If you did find it motivating, there is a lot of things that you can do. Beginning with in the voting booth. You walk in that booth, please don't vote for any more extended sentences. Before you go ahead and vote for an enhancement, as scary and as important as it might seem, before you go ahead and vote for a gang enhancement or a firearm enhancement or any enhancement that sticks on an incredible amount of time to someone who committed a crime for the crime that they committed, ask yourself this. Am I doing this because it makes me feel good or it makes me feel tough? Or am I doing this because I want to make society safe? Because if that's what you want, then that's not the vote you want to make. What's going to happen when that person's time is up? I mean, really, what's going to happen then? What are they going to do? What resources are available? What choices are they going to have? And can we afford to lock people up for this amount of time, especially when the quality of our prisons and our jails right now has fallen so egregiously that they are just hotbeds for civil actions, which will cost you more money, and also you just don't want people taking away the freedoms of others, taking away the liberty of others, and subjecting them to something inhuman in your name. Another thing you can do, if you're lucky enough to get on a jury, read the instructions. Don't be afraid of the crime. Don't assume that person is clearly guilty simply because they're sitting in that defendant's chair. If you have any doubts at the end of that trial, at the end of the time when you've deliberated and you've thought about it, if you have any doubts at all, please stand by them. That's what we're supposed to do. And if you're not in a courthouse, well, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. You can give your money or your time to organizations like the Innocence Project or any of the numerous organizations that try to make the way we treat those who are convicted more humanely. You can help them out. There's probably an Innocence Project close to you. Their work is incredible. So far, they've exonerated over 317 wrongfully convicted individuals. It's fantastic. Go to www.innocenceproject.org and read what they do. And most importantly, you can just keep talking about it, all right? Have these types of conversations. You're going to know somebody who's done time in jail, or you're going to know somebody who knows somebody who's done or is doing time in jail. Right now, 1 out of every 100 males in the United States has spent time or will spend time in jail. Either you or someone you care about is going to end up there, and you are somehow going to still be connected to that condemned but still human being. And we're not sending these people there so we can treat them in a way that reflects so poorly on us. If we're going to take away people's freedom, well, that means we have to put something in its place, and we have to be responsible in how we do it. That's pretty much my rant for the day. Listen, if you got ideas for the show, let me know about them. Email to me at change@renovatejustice.com. I'll read my emails. I'll get back to you. You can read follow my blog about the kind of things that we want to do, things I think we need to start paying attention to. That's at www.renovatejustice.com. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me at wallachlegal.com. Big thanks to my producers, Ryan McCormick and Mark Goldman in New York. And until we speak again, please, let's keep using our heads. Let's stop using our hate, and we can make this a whole bunch better. Thanks for listening.
rock and roll.